We were all backstage, and there was a fucking table, like a mountain, Scarface level mountain of Coke. And everyone in the room is like, they're all twitching and sweating, and they're like, come on, Kraig, do some Coke. I'm like, I'm leaving the fucking room before the dust in the air gets in my nose and I fucking overdose.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 New Jersey punk rock scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Kraig Marshall graced the NJ scene in the late 90s with his backyard shows, his band Sticker, and then went on to form Example 24, which took him in a completely different direction musically. This interview goes in many directions, but the one thing that's unmistakable is how passionate Kraig is about music and his roots. In this interview, we discussed the Masonic Temple in Ridgewood, filming videos of 7 Seconds in ministry when he was younger, the pure drive in creating music, Jeremy Hernandez from Humble Beginnings' keen fashion sense, getting added last minute to shows, the bad blood with Sticker after he got dropped, his backyard shows, Example 24 starting with one sound and then taking a hard left, his relationship with Richard from Filter when Title of a Record came out, his transition to just writing songs and then finding people to tour with. Then we jump back into talking about Sticker and the backyard shows towards the end, and a ton more. Now, before we begin, I got myself a sponsor. So many of you might remember Robert Muscatello from this little band called LWL. Well, he works for a company called Southern Tier Brewing, who is sponsoring this episode, and here's a little bit about them. Southern Tier Brewing Company started in 2002 and has been a pioneer in the craft brewing world ever since. Nestled in the beautiful countryside of Lakewood, New York, Southern Tier has been known for classic styles such as pale ales, porters, blondes, and IPAs to more innovative styles like barrel-aged stouts, sours, seasonals, dessert beers, and the country's top-selling pumpkin ale, the Imperial Pum King, which is available right now. Consistently staying ahead of the craft beer curve, Southern Tier commitment to quality can be found in each bottle or can of their world-class brews. All Southern Tier products can be found in your area or just visit www.stbcbeer.com. Click on the beer finder and put in your zip code. In a culture saturated with everything under the sun, it's good to know Southern Tier stays true to their pioneering roots and continues to trailblaze the future of the craft beer industry. No matter the style of beer you like, Southern Tier has a brew for you and plenty others to expand your horizons. So, treat yourself and the ones you love to what world-class beer is. Cheers from Southern Tier Brewing Company. Visit them at stbcbeer.com and find them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Apparently, I'm going to start charging per word because that was very long. If you haven't had pumpkin, it's the fucking shit. So you should definitely get that since fall's coming and football. And yeah, as always, thank you to the people who've donated to the podcast. If you'd like to do so as well, just go to thiswasthescene.com and send whatever you'd like. There's a big button on the top that says donate. Don't forget to check out the merch and the Lanemeyer vinyl and my book. These are all things that help me stay alive. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who you know would love some nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Today, everyone, we have a treat. This is the first time I've actually started like that.
I like it.
Boys and girls, we have a special guest today. This is Mr. Kraig Marshall. How are you, Kraig?
I am so good, and I'm so incredibly honored to be on your podcast. And I thank you. Everyone fucking worships you for keeping the scene alive in this way.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, man, that's awesome. I've heard Example 24, and I don't know how many episodes you listen to, but there's a few out there. But you guys have been mentioned many times, but within that, I didn't realize that you were. Now I thought we called it. Didn't people say shows? It was Kraig's backyard back in the day. Isn't that like what it was called, or was it just the backyard shows?
It had like, there it goes again. Like, sorry.
Yeah.
It has many names. On flyers, we put Cheesy Backyard Gig, and we had 7 of them. So it was either like Kraig's Backyard or Backyard Gig or Cheesy Backyard Gig or New Milford Shows or whatever. It had like 314 Garage. To me, was always 314 Garage. So there's
was
a
that
show
the Heckle
tonight,
Garage?
314 Garage.
Was that the one where Chris Heckle?
Yes.
And, okay, that was We only played there one time, and it was right before the last tour we went on. But I'd always heard of that. But there was a lot of these places that weren't halls that were, and it's funny too because you said you only had 7 shows there.
Only seven, yeah. And the last one was the biggest one. We had the casualties, and there was 300. I think we had 350 people, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it was like the peak of that Jersey scene at the time.
But isn't it funny that there was only 7 shows, but it lived on in infamy as you thought it was like hundreds of shows, but it was only 7 fucking shows.
It's incredible. And that being said, on that note, fucking like Darren and Amy, is it Darren or Darian? I can't remember. The Masonic Temple in Ridgewood, that was like a big fucking, that was our home. And those
That I
guys,
don't know. That I actually do not know what that is.
are you serious?
Yeah,
Is
dude.
that-
Trust me.
that-
There's a lot of things in this where I'm kind of unraveling things that I didn't really know about the scene, which I love how, and I've heard of it, but it wasn't as in my face as a lot of people in the beginning who I interviewed were people that I knew personally, and now it's kind of branching out of that, which is great because a lot of people out there they're like, well, what about my part of Jersey? What my part of Jersey? So it's cool to hear about these things that I didn't know about.
that is incredible, and you're so right. And I know there's people like screaming at their podcasts that are listening. Yeah, Masonic Temple, Ridgewood. Man, you want me to go into that a bit, because it really
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
extraordinary.
Yeah, well,
So-
we'll structure this later, or soon. But anything that's reminiscent of the past, man, people love this shit.
Yeah, I jump around like crazy, so please forgive me.
I will hone you in. I'm a professional now.
You're gonna have to rein me in. That's just how it goes. Yeah, Masonic Temple. So I don't know where the fuck they came from, and I think his name was Darian, and his partner was Amy,
Okay.
and they just started running these shows at the Masonic Temple in Ridgewood, and it was incredible right off the bat. And they would I think they had a zine first, so they started putting out stuff in the zine, and there were all these bands coming from Pennsylvania
Okay.
that no one had ever heard of. I remember Homewrecker. That was one of the first bands I think I ever saw at the Masonic Temple, and it was amazing to see a band playing Fat Record style music in person. Like, there was, you heard it through your CDs and stuff, but then there's this band and they have a 7-inch, and you're like, it's the beginning
real.
of, it's real, and you're collecting 7 inches. It's sort of the beginning of your local 7-inch thing. You get that, then you get, Weston, and you get
Yeah.
Flatus, and all those amazing bands doing split 7-inches and all that at the time. It was so awesome, and their scene just kept building. And there was one night that was really amazing. So about like 2 weeks before the show, I had heard this amazing ska band. A friend had a tape, like your story. It's like the fucking common story. A friend had a tape,
Yep.
popped in on my boombox, and they're like, this band is from Florida. And I'm like, I didn't even know there was a ska scene in Florida. And it was a song called Liquor Store. And
I don't know
and
where I'm going.
there was easily 800 kids in the Masonic Temple. And I had no idea. You'd just go. There'd be 800 kids normally, and you would just go, and you wouldn't even know any of the bands. So all of a sudden, I start hearing this song, and I recognize it. I'm like, this is Less Than Jake.
Yeah.
This is this band from Florida. And they were like no one at the time. They're still in a fucking cargo van and a trailer. And they're like, they're attainable. And I just remember racing out of the pit to buy the tape before the tape sold out, and then racing right back in the pit. And again, like, those pits back then were so amazing. It was nothing like what it became when, like, I don't want to get my ass kicked, but like when FSU came into the scene much, much, much later, and it got really violent. It was so far removed from that. Everyone listening to this knows it was the most positive scene. Everyone was in it for the right reasons. Everyone was just in it for the love of the music and the bonding social experience that was happening in Jersey at the time.
Well, it's funny on that note. So the show at Debonair a couple weeks ago, so Humble goes on, just literally on that whole note. People in the crowd were literally smiling, arms around each other, jumping around, pointing fingers, and it took me back to back then when that's what we did.
It's fucking amazing.
It was literally
to be that way now is and recreated essentially, but really, it's not false. I'm up in Massachusetts. I would have loved to come to the show. But everything I've seen, it's so fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, well, actually, where in Mass are you? My family's from my family's from Lynn, And so I've been up to Massachusetts like so many. My mom lives in the Cape and my sister lives in Bridgewater. Where are you?
Oh, right on. I'm based in Whitman right now,
Where is
so
that
I'm really
by?
close to Bridgewater. I'm
Oh
very
yeah.
close to Bridgewater.
So you by Taunton and all that?
Yes, I actually work in Taunton. I live 30 minutes outside of Boston. So Boston has really New York City was everything to me. So it's been very hard to acclimate to a new city. Um, but I love Boston. I'm into it now.
Well, the Boston scene, I don't want to go in this direction too far, but the Boston scene, when we would go up there, I mean, that was one of the other, that and Florida was one of these cities that embraced us because there was such a scene there as well, where kids would show up and they were so appreciative, and it was it mirrored what Jersey was, where it was going back to the whole point of the pit was there was just this love in these crowds. It was like you weren't there by yourself at some of the New York City shows where you'd go in and people were just, oh yeah, this is aggressive. I'm gonna punch each other and do a circle pit. When I would go to in some shows in the city, if it was face to face or something, you would just grab someone you didn't know, but because you had the lyrics, it was that automatic glue to you just bonding right there.
Yes,
And then that's
yes,
what Jersey was. It was you'd be in that pit, and I found that did happen in Massachusetts, where we used to love going there because of that. And those
yeah.
kids had it. I'm like, how does everyone know that this exists? There's no internet.
No, and that's another. You know what? That's another phenomenal point. And have you brought that up on other podcasts where it's crazy how far it went without the internet.
There was one where I talked about when we'd play shows in in the Midwest, or we'd be in California, and it was a mere. There was always a twist though. The twist was the fashion, or like some scenes would have more of the like oi punk kids, and some scenes would have more of the California punk kids, and some scenes had more of where it looked like Jersey. And then I always felt like Jersey had its own. Jersey was kind of a mix of what I think other scenes had, because we would see that on the VHS like video comps and stuff. So I think we would kind of that, or we'd go to Pacific somewhere or the mall and see something, or there was just some imagery somewhere where we're like, oh wow, that looks we're gonna dress like that.
Yeah.
Or like it was just going to a fucking Salvation Army and saying, oh, that shirt's $3, great, I'll buy a bunch of those.
Fuck yes. And then at some point, Salvation Army started charging like $12 for shirts. Fuck this. What
I think it's like a haul, man. They all started realizing, wait a minute, there's a need. We need to start upping the prices right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck.
But okay, so actually, I love that direction. So I don't really. Sometimes I get lost on where the fuck I was going because I get too excited about this stuff.
That's okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
but yeah, it was before I kind of going back into how you got into music and stuff. But yeah, you're right, man. I mean, the scene was that it was just really excited people back in the day, and it was. I loved how you said I played it in my boombox and I had to grab the tape before it sold out, and then split 7 inches. I don't think I haven't heard that. I don't think I may have talked about that in a couple interviews, but that's another thing too. I forgot about was there always was a split 7 inch, like Digger and Weston had a great one, and then
Yep.
who the fuck else? I mean, that's how we'd learn about bands. And then Jimmy Eat World had one with Mineral, and I think Sensefield and Texas the Reason, and all these different bands had all that shit back then.
Yeah. And that it really okay. So between split 7 inches and comps, fuck, dude, I can't even tell you how many bands that I found. Just okay. So Rest Assured, I found out about Rest Assured from one of the comps. It's just there were so many bands, and you would get it for like I would get it for Rest Assured, and then you'd find 19 other amazing bands that were in high school that you're like, these are. And you find like you're friends of my friends, and like you just start going to all the shows. And man, like, do you remember getting out of high school and you didn't go home and like, oh, I'm so fucking tired, put on Netflix? You would get out of high school and go straight to whatever fucking show was on Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely.
I miss that.
I know,
I don't
man.
have the energy for that. I just don't. I just don't have it. I'm 39 now. I just don't have the energy.
I'll tell you, man. I mean, I'm not gonna keep harping on this, but it was just, because it's so fresh. But there was an interview where I talked to forget who it was, but one of my favorite Humble songs was Faith 98, and they got up and played it. And I'm up in the balcony in the back, and they're like, like, where's Doyle? This is the song we're gonna play. No shit, I sprinted to the front of the stage, and I'm just going nuts. And it was just because I was so excited, and that energy that I had when I was 19 just came back out of nowhere. Like, yeah, granted, the next 2 days I was sore as shit.
I was just about to say, like, your poor knees. Like, your knees are like, what the fuck are you doing to us, man?
Yeah, they're like, we can't do this anymore. But no, I mean, you'd be surprised when I think a lot of it is psychosomatic bullshit. And I don't like when people are going, I'm close to 40. I go, well, the problem is when you're saying that, that's actually mentally, I think you're kind of becoming older. Where you're not that bad. Like, things aren't as bad as what you really think, and your body can fucking handle this shit still.
No, you're right. I do have to start running for the record. My cardio game is very weak.
I'm telling you, man, it's all about, and I don't want to go into the whole thoughts or things, but it's true, man. I think a lot of people, when they get close, they're like, oh, I'm 40 years old, I have to act this way. And I just don't buy into it. I live a life that I want to live. Like, I still try to be as much DIY and to this day. And I think that keeps, it keeps a youth. Sure, your body also sometimes is like, all right, cool, we can't go that fucking crazy. But I think you can get away with a lot more things than if you think you can't.
Yeah, you're right. I did just use that as an excuse. You're making me a better person today.
Yeah, stop doing that, Kraig.
I'm going to stop doing that. Everyone ignore what I just did.
I'm going to Ellen your ass right now and Oprah you right now. All right, so I want to go back and introduce people to where you started from. So Kraig, he was, I just did a sticker interview with Jeremy. Well, Jeremy's interview was sticker and every other fucking thousands of bands he's been in. But yeah. Sticker was the beginning, and he talked about Kraig a lot, so I want to talk about that. He had backyard shows at his house, the 7 of them, but which I've heard were epic, and then also Example 24. So these are all things, and I think the backyard shows were mentioned here and there throughout a lot of interviews, but that not as much as Example 24, which has come up a ton of times, which I didn't know who you guys were, honestly. And
so I just have to ask, because we actually were very, very polarizing. Are people talking shit?
No. You guys would always come up. I think one person said that you guys would have a really interesting stage show. It was different. Yeah. But then I saw the video you posted in the Facebook group, and it sounded like you guys were a straight up punk band.
We went through a bunch of changes. So that was after Sticker. Did you want to start at Sticker and make our way there?
I want to start with Sticker because I also asked Jeremy about some questions, and he just had one thing you want to talk about. But I want to go back to way back, but just music in general, as I do every interview. What got you into music?
So I was there was a major turning point in my life. I was 12 years old, and my parents were divorcing, and at the same time, right on the gap between 12 and 13. My grandfather died, and my grandfather was a huge influence in my life. My dad was just a complete fucking prick. So my grandfather really was the only male role model I had. When he died, it really crushed me. And I was always artistic. I was always into music of sorts, actually more so filmmaking. I started filmmaking. I think I was like 10 years old, and I had my first video camera. So I would shoot music videos for bands that I liked. So I remember doing a music video for Ministry and I forgot what else, 7 Seconds. So I had like all these punk and industrial and metal influences. So I was filming videos. And then at some point, right around the time my grandfather died, I said, I should do my own music and film my own videos. And that's exactly what I started doing. And while everyone,
Wait, you filmed videos for 7 Seconds and for Ministry?
No.
I was like, wait a minute, what?
This kid was hooked up. Oh, let me rephrase that. They had no knowledge of me. This was like for my own amusement. I apologize. Okay. I phrased that really poorly.
I was like, God damn.
No, for my own amusement. I would just have a lot of fun, and I was just always into that. So at some point I just said, I want to write my own music and film my own videos. And I remember I had no drums, so I was just literally banging on pots, and so I had my boom box. It had double tape player, so you would and a mic input. So I'd throw in the mic input, record drums. Then I would take the tape, flip it over to the play side, hit play, hit record on the new tape, and then plug in like a bass and record a bass track. Then take the bass and drum track, put it in the next tape thing, stick the first tape over. And by that time, you start losing generations. So now you could barely hear the drums. You lay some guitar over. Now you could barely hear the bass. By the time vocals go over, all you could fucking hear on my original demo tapes is just nasty, horrible vocals, and it would just punch in and out, and you barely hear the music. But that's how I got started. And I was 13 years old. I was pissed. I was really fucking broken between the divorce and my grandfather's death. So it was a perfect time. And of course, you're 13 and you're just pissed off at the world to begin with.
Yeah.
And it just all converged perfectly. And then my first bandmates were like my friends at the time who didn't even play instruments. It was just like, let's do this. And it was awful. And that's just how it started to evolve. And my first band, it gained some traction. My first band was actually, well, it was Ventral Fin and then Nuclear Gonzo. And Nuclear Gonzo was like 93, 94. And we started discovering, I think the first thing I saw Heft at some church.
Yeah.
And that's what really, I was like, there's a fucking scene. There's something going on. So we started playing church basements. And that's, I think, how we got into halls. We just started, like, you'd get a flyer at the mall and it would be Elks Lodge, whatever, and all these bands you never heard of, but you would go and that's really, and then I want my band on the next bill, and you'd talk to the promoter. And
were you going to shows as a band, or were you going to shows? It sounds like you were starting a band, but you were also into the scene, so it was kind of a mix. What did you do? What did you do first? Did you go to a show as a band? Or did you go to a show as a fan?
I would go to a show as a fan, absolutely, but at the same time, I would have my best friend Peter. He was in Nuclear Gonzo with me. He was the singer, and I played bass. And we would go to shows. Started going to shows early together, and getting into music together. So definitely it was friends first, and then just this surge of inspiration. Like, I need to do that. It's your typical story of, I can play 3 chords. I want to be on stage. It looks like a lot of fucking fun. And it was.
Did you fantasize about it when you see that? And because I used to look at, when I was younger, I used to go to my buddy's house and we would watch Bon Jovi and Def Leppard, and then we put on shows for our parents with tennis rackets. So we'd literally gather our parents. This is like when we were like fucking 7. And we'd gather our parents in a room. We were like, we're going to put on a show. And our parents were like, oh, fucking God. And then we'd put on sunglasses and headbands and wristbands and have tennis rackets. And we'd sit there and play Living on a Prayer in front of them. And we were having the best time. And they're just like, please make this stop, but I have to be, a parent who's supporting my kid. But I remember in that moment, it was so real to me that I'm like, I want to be Bon Jovi one day. Like, did you find when you got into music and started playing in bands that you were constantly living in this headspace that you wanted to be this big band in front of people?
Yes, specifically Nirvana. Nirvana was an enormous influence on me and obviously the world. And I remember being in Pete's basement, and for a drum set, we set up a bunch of boxes, and I think I had a cardboard guitar, and we set up my video camera, and hopefully that tape is long since burned. And it was just fucking humiliating. Yeah, that we didn't do like shows for, by the time we did our first show, we actually were kind of a band. It was
you
really,
actually had real instruments, or?
Yes, and none of us knew how to play them. But it was terrible. It was fucking terrible. It was every bit of as embarrassing as what you just told me.
What did you remember about your first show? Like, what was the audience or their reaction? Was there a bunch of people in front of you? Was it like 5 people? Like, do you remember what exactly it looked like?
Yes. It was okay. You really are a very good interviewer. You're about to get, no one has ever heard this. So it was a Hanukkah party at my house for my family. And I remember my aunt she didn't stop bitching the whole time that it was too hot, and then it was too cold, and then it was too hot, and then it was too loud. It was just it was constant, like between every song. Can you turn it down? Can you turn the heat up? Can you? It was the worst audience ever.
Oh
And
God.
what was really interesting about that band, I don't want to say her name, but I had a friend of mine who actually later became a porn star, like a pretty big fucking porn star, who was
Seriously?
in that band. Yeah, she played bass in the band. We went to high school
Oh my
together.
God, that's crazy.
So it's interesting. And we had at that point one of my best friends quit that band already. So we got his little brother who played drums even less than my friend did. It was like his first time playing drums, the first song. It was really fucking terrible. Really, really terrible. Really, really humiliating. And then after that, it really started to come together. And okay, we need some order here. That was absolutely fucking terrible. We can't do anything with that. And then it really started to, little by little, it came together, and it started, rumblings of what made sense, sort
But
of, as a band.
but don't you
And at
kind of,
that time,
but don't you find that that's interesting that there's a lot of people. I was talking to someone the other day. No, I was talking to Jay from the Jerkoffs in his interview, and he was like, "Yeah, sometimes I'll start these projects, and no one will gravitate towards it, so I'll just kind of give up and do the next thing." But don't you find there's this resilience that you might have built in yourself back then from you knew then, like, this is such shit, but I want it so bad that how do we get there? Like, what do we need to do to get better?
of course. And that leads to just listening to more and more projects and more bands, and obviously practicing. And we used to fucking rehearse for easily 16 hours straight, easily.
Really?
Um, yeah, I remember specifically there was a span of like 2 weeks where my mom went away, and we would just rehearse in the basement, and that's all we did, night and day. My friends would sleep over. We'd get up, we would rehearse, we'd go to shows, we'd come home, rehearse more. We loved playing. It was more than learning. It was the best way to learn. It was all out of love and just enjoying playing the music. And obviously, when you do something 16 hours a day, every day, you're gonna get better. So we did,
Yeah.
and that's just how it progressed. But absolutely, the drive was there. And beyond that, I'm an audio engineer too. So I was always fascinated with the production of records. So I'd be like, how the fuck do they make the guitar sound like that? Or I was always obsessed with kick drums, snares, guitars. I was upset. I could never get the compression right on bass. So I'd listen to stuff and say, how the fuck do they do this without like maxing out Unity,
Yeah.
going over Unity, So I was always fascinated with that. So that helped too. In like, okay, I'm fucking, this is like the Heft podcast. So when I saw Heft, they had a Pearl. It's crazy that I remember this. They had a Pearl Pro Export snare. And we had like one of those shitty fucking like snares that sound like you're hitting a sandbox. And
Yep.
I just remember that ping. And that changed everything for me. That led into hardcore music because you always have that ping,
Yep.
snap, snare. And it just really, you build the music around that basis. And it's, yeah, I just went off a major tangent. So, yes, a lot of learning early on.
That's totally fine. I think it's cool because did you ever find, and well, I'm going to stray out for a second, did you find there was a point in your life from that beginning stage where I think every kid who in their life, they already have it figured out what they want to do. And their parents put them in school and say, you have to do this. And they're like, okay. And I think when they get into trouble is that they're not doing what they want to do. It doesn't feel right. And then they kind of go in the directions. But some people will find that and they'll rebel against it and they'll come back around later on and say, no, like this is what I want to fucking do. And then they find that they're successful in that direction. Did you find that you at a young age had this ear and this inquisitiveness of how do they do that? But it's strictly audio. It wasn't cars. It wasn't like a building you saw. It was strictly music. And that led you, like you said, and now you are in a career right now where you're doing that? Or you did that for a while as a career?
You mean music or audio engineering?
Audio engineering.
Oh, audio engineering, absolutely. I ran a studio out of my old apartment in Clifton, New Jersey. Yeah, I would record all local bands, and I was always recording, my band, and I I would record friends' bands later on in life. Like this is jumping way ahead, but
That's fine.
I managed a rehearsal studio for a while, so I would bring my gear there. It was a perfect place to record in the middle of the night when I would shut down.
Are you still doing that now? Are you still doing audio now?
I'm always, I'm working on a new album right now. So I just fucking a minute before we started this, I was still recording. I'm always working on stuff.
But that's my point. It was that, and did you find that it still feels right to you?
It's the only, when I'm doing it, other artists listening to this know when you get into a flow, the whole world goes away. All your problems go away. The fucking noise in your head and everything you're worried about goes away. And you're so singularly focused on what's directly in front of you and how to make it sound like what you hear in your head.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's magic. It's, I don't know, man. What is that? It's like the same vibe of, I don't know, being
It's what you should
psychic,
do. It's
dreaming.
It's what you should be. So you back then with music and all that stuff, it's like you had to figure it out. My question was going to be, was there ever a point in that direction between then and now? And I'll go back into, I want to talk about Sticker, but where you kind of strayed a bit and you're like, this doesn't feel right, and you cut right back into doing it, or did you just stay the course all the time?
I have always, ever since that moment, man, like the first Friday night when I'm alone in my room and I have finished jerking off to the pornography that I stolen from my father, and I'm done lighting my desk on fire because I'm a little fucking arsonist. It's ever since then. I've never strayed. I've only added to it. As a going through the motions as a DIY band, you become a graphic designer, you become a booking agent, you become a manager, you're a multi-instrumentalist to cover the things that other people can't. So you're a videographer. So I've only added to that arsenal. But I've never strayed ever.
You're a creator, and music is the thing that in some way you're creating. It's either in video, even if you're doing video, you're very focused on the music. If you're doing audio, I mean, obviously that's strictly music. Or it's, if you're managing, it's probably in bands, and because you need to see that, you need to be around that core of what we all felt. Just was the fucking music.
It's pure drive and pure love, man. It's it's really profound the way it hits you, and you just stay with it if you truly love it. And obviously, I'm sure you as well, you've seen people deviate and they go, I don't know. I have plenty of people that just went by the wayside, and they said, and like we said earlier, you were growing up, or getting older, and people make a conscious decision to say, hey, I'm not making money at this, so I gotta take a different path. And then you put the guitar down, you don't pick it up for fucking 5 years. It can't happen. And if it's really in you, it can't happen like that.
I think that's why a lot of people needed that show the couple weekends ago. Was just, I've never stopped living in this world. I mean, I've worked for myself since 2006. Like the band broke up in 2001. And then I was lost for a minute, and I found graphic design, which was my new muse, but it was creating. And then I also found that it connected me to music because I found artists that would create for bands. So when I got into that from 2006 until now, I said, well, I can work for myself. It's still my own thing, and I can create. And I never let go of that. So I think that's why I'm still attached to the past, because I never broke away from it so much. And I think that people now that are our age, they were there because they felt such a, oh my God, I forgot about this.
Yeah.
I missed this. And I hope that, I think a lot of people I do talk to people and they say, yeah, I work this job and it's not great. But then in the weekends, I put back on my gear, which, a t-shirt, or like some band you love or something, and I go listen to records. It's like they haven't disconnected from that, but during the week, the 40 or 50, 60 hours a week or 100 hours a week, they're doing this fucking thing that they don't want to do.
Yeah. And a lot of us are. I'm happy in my career right now. I cultivate marijuana, medical marijuana, since it's legal in Massachusetts.
That's amazing.
and I truly enjoy it. It's another passion that I discovered very late in life. I hadn't started smoking until I was 32. I had never touched anything, and like I said, I'm 39 now, so I'm still a baby to it. So it's still a very exciting world. So I'm happy doing what I'm doing for a career, but I have gone through the fucking ringer, auto part fucking delivery and working in hot warehouses, and every day you just want to kill yourself. Plenty of that. I've never been rich off of music. I can't even stress that enough. I think the most I ever made off a tour was $900, and that was like, oh my God, I'm fucking loaded. I'm officially a rock star. $900,
I know.
it's gone.
It's so worth it. You're like, yes, I've made it.
I've really made it. But no. Nope. But that drive is always still there. You're in the warehouse, and all you're thinking is, I can't wait to get home and record or play a show or anything but here,
Yeah, man. So on that note, let's Sticker is, I'd say, the band that I know the most of. After, I mean, because you guys were still in high school, you guys were a bunch of skateboard friends, and you guys got together, what, 14, 16 to do that band?
Yeah. I remember I wasn't driving. So, man, this goes back. I want to get into first. Let me start. Let's see. Okay. So first I want to start a note, and Jeremy is going to love this. Jeremy and I were in the same grade in high school.
Jeremy Hernandez from Humble Beginnings now, and
yes,
anyone listening, I was told I should start doing this, so I'm just gonna fucking say that. But whatever. Go on.
Absolutely. No. Thank you for doing that. Totally. People need reference, of course. Jeremy, I was obsessed with Jeremy. I wasn't friends with him. He was always the cooler. He was always into amazing music. I would watch him like walking around the halls, and I was really into music, but I was always I was bullied. I was absolutely not cool at all. And I just always looked at him like, that fucking kid is into the coolest fucking music. He always had, he had Fugazi. I remember he had a Fugazi jacket, and it said 1, 2, 3 repeater on it.
Yep.
He would walk around in Nine Inch Nails shirts and everything else. He had fucking cool hair. His mom, from what I remember, was a hairstylist. So he always had fucking awesome hair. Like, I was just like, I was enamored with him.
He is actually, just real quick, we were hanging out the other day, and I said, dude, I've always been impressed by your style. I always tried to match it, and I've always fallen short. I'm like, even to this fucking day, you still have fashion, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, like, for real. Like, good on you, Jeremy. Like, really, you should be very proud. You are a fashion icon. But that's the truth. That is the truth. So I would look at him, and I remember, I think I asked him at some point if he played any instruments or if he was in a band or something, and he totally blew me off, and I felt like such a dickhead. And eventually, yeah, like you said, we were skate kids. Bill Petrino was a senior, I believe, and I was a grade under him. And he was really into skateboarding, and I remember he was into skate punk, like Pennywise and everything. And just at some point, I was always into skateboarding too. So at some point, we just started talking, and I think we just met up after school somewhere, and we would skate at this place called The Cube in New Milford, New Jersey.
Okay.
And The Cube was this underground parking deck under a building, and we would just skate and we'd hang out, we'd listen to music. And at some point, he would come to Nuclear Gonzo shows. So we were playing like the Rec Room, and he would just be like dancing on stage and fucking around with us. And eventually he put on a guitar, and we formed a band, and that was Sticker. It was me, Bill, and I think he brought in Jack. Jack was the drummer, and it was me, Bill, and Jack, and I was playing bass and singing. And I was absolutely, like, I was a Mohawk kid. I was into hardcore punk. I was really into the Exploited. So I was like a Mohawk kid. Bill was a skate punk. Jack was sort of like, just like, for lack of a better word, Jack was kind of like a New Milford redneck. Like, Jack really wasn't immersed in the scene at all until Sticker. And we were playing a lot of shows. We were playing the Pipeline a lot. Fuck ton. Play the Pipeline all the time.
As kids? As, like, teenagers? Yeah. Without licenses?
No. Bill, let's see. Does Bill... I think Jack was the oldest. Jack was driving, and then I think Bill got his license. So, yeah, we would go like that.
Rolling into Newark. Okay.
Rolling into Newark. and it was fucking great. We would play the Pipeline, and then like the next day we'd be in school, and it was that vibe of like, holy shit, we did something relevant last night. Like everyone else was suckers and just went home and did homework, and we were fucking playing last night. It was a blast. And then at some point, just by sheer, I think, coincidence, Jack and Bill were hanging out with Jeremy, and I remember we went to the River Edge Diner. I'll never forget it. And they sat down, and I can't remember if Jeremy was there or not. I don't think he was, but I think they just said, listen, we want to have Jeremy on vocals. We want to move you to backup vocals and bass. And my ego was just very damaged in that conversation. I was lead singer. These were primarily all my songs.
Yeah.
So the thought of someone else singing my songs was really awkward. And as soon as we played our first show with Jeremy, it was so obvious this was the way to go. And I think one of the best ones we did. So there's a video out there of us playing Cresskill High School.
Yep.
That was the whole vibe. I mean, how that was a fucking amazing lineup. There was no arguing with it.
How did you guys? But that show, like everyone's going off, and Jeremy had said in his interview that show was like your first show together or something like that, or like I might have heard that wrong.
That might have been our first show with Jeremy. I remember hitting the ground running with Jeremy, and the scene was just in flux and amazing. And I don't remember any. I'm sure there were, but I don't remember any bad shows once we got Jeremy. It was just a powerhouse of a four-piece. We played one of my backyard gigs. It was Backyard Gig 3, and it was phenomenal. It was fucking packed. There was so many kids there, and we were so on our game that night. It was really an incredible band. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, so you're doing Sticker, but when did you start? Okay, so two questions. One, how did that many kids know like your songs? Because in that video, I mean, they're all going fucking apeshit at this high school.
Yeah, that's a very good question. We put out a couple demos.
Or were they just dancing because they were having fun, or because it looks like they know the words though?
No, they legitimately knew. That was one of the most fun parts of that band. Okay. For whatever reason, the songs, I'm going to pat myself on the back here. The songs I was writing at the time were very catchy, and they were really fucking good, and they really hit the pop punk mark.
Yeah.
And they really struck a chord with people, and we put out a couple demo tapes. Can't remember. I know there was like Attack of the Kiwi Kids, and there was I can't remember. I think we put out like 2 or 3 demo tapes, but that's how they learned the words, and every show was like that for a while. It was so awesome. I remember I would take the 762 bus home from Paramus Park, and there was one time I took it and I got off. I can't even remember how the fuck I found out about this, but there had been a show going on, and I think Bill or Jack got a hold of me, and they were just like, you need to get back to New Milford. There's a show, and they're going to let us play and borrow some gear, which was always the fucking way back then. There were so many bands.
That was so awesome. Oh, that was the best ever.
And those were like the most fun gigs. You weren't supposed to be there. You didn't promote it. You borrowed gear, and you had like the best time. And that's what happened that night in particular. There were so many good gigs like that. Last minute shows were always the best.
Yeah, you just show up in it was a couple times we'd go to a garage, and it was just like, yeah, we got on this thing tonight, and it's, we're playing like last, but it's in this garage, and you're like, oh fuck yeah, and you'd show up there, and sure, the sound probably sucked, and it wasn't like the best thing, but you'd get up there and just go off, and everyone was just like, what just happened right there?
It was so much energy because you didn't have time to get nervous.
Yeah.
It was what it was.
Yeah, that's a good point. It wasn't the build up where you knew you had a show in 3 weeks on a Saturday where you had to overthink it. It was just, hey, last minute, let's go do this. And you didn't have time. It's sure you got nervous for a second, but you didn't have enough time to overthink it.
Yeah. I think the most nervous part about those gigs was coming up with a set list on the spot, because you suddenly can't remember any song you play.
Yeah.
You're like, what the fuck? Like collectively, we remember 3 songs that we play, and you're like, what the fuck else do we play? God damn it. We've been doing this for a year. We can't remember any of our songs.
So when you and Jeremy met, because you were idolizing him from a distance, I was
pining for Jeremy.
So when he got in the band, were you guys friends prior to that, or was it one of those where it's like that movie where someone's like, man, that's like the cool kid in school, and all of a sudden they show up and they're like, hey, I'm gonna be in your band, and you're kind of like, we've never talked before. This is insane.
That was absolutely what it was like. But the moment that solidified, I think the moment that Jeremy and I became friends, when I first showed up to rehearse at Jack's, I walked in and Jeremy and Jack were like, do this on the bass. Or like, it was some slap bass maneuver. They're like, do this. And I just did it on the spot. And that was it. And after that, after that, we were just friends.
Were you good at bass?
I was really, yeah. So I was really into Primus.
Oh, wow.
When I first started playing. So as soon as I heard Primus, I had a bass teacher that was like, he was a total burnout. He would come to the door in his bathrobe. He had like 9 cats. And I just remember sitting there and I said, I want to learn how to do this. I don't know how the fuck this is possible. And I just remember him showing me how you hit the fucking string with the side of your thumb and you pop. And I just kept practicing. And yeah, so I got really, really into slap bass.
What were the bands at that moment in time that were influencing you besides Primus? Was it just all bands with a good bass player, or is it just did that not matter?
No, it was just one of those things like we were talking before when you're just listening and you're picking apart the recording and you go, what the fuck is making that noise? That's like all like boinging and bouncy and like someone is doing that on a bass. Oh, Infectious Grooves. That was huge. So do you know Infectious Grooves by any chance?
It sounds very familiar.
Okay, so Infectious Grooves was the side project of Suicidal Tendencies. Okay. And Rob Trujillo was, I think I'm saying his name right. Rob Trujillo was the bassist for Suicidal Tendencies and Infectious Grooves. And there was a song, and I beseech everyone to put on Punk It Up by Infectious Grooves. It is the most fun fucking song. And it's like a straight up thrash punk song, but with slap bass, like really fast slap bass. So when I heard that, I said, like, that's what I want to do. And that's what I did. That's it.
Oh my god! Actually, I'm Wikipediaing this right now too. Oh yeah. Rob. Fucking.
Oh, and then he went on to play bass for Metallica.
Yeah, this little local band called Metallica. I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, that guy. I was like, why does that name sound fucking so familiar?
This unknown guy named John Lennon with a little local.
Yeah, weird accent. Really loved love.
Really loved love. Yes.
Okay, Jeremy, I reached out to him and said, okay, I need some questions to ask Kraig. And he was like, oh, talk about his backyard shows, talk about Sticker. And he goes, he wants me to talk about the one time you got up on a desk in school and revolted against the teacher.
So Jeremy, that was.
Because he said you guys were little shits in your school, apparently.
We were such assholes. This was senior year, and it was just a matter of, like, we're graduating, and it doesn't really fucking matter. Yeah, we had this math class, and we would torture this poor teacher, this guy, Mr. Rieger. And he was just this short, very hairy, clearly disgruntled dude that had just had enough, and just he would reprimand us, and at some point he just gave up. And I remember there were these I don't know how to exactly explain it, but there were these sort of metal, I guess, like shelves or something in the wall with like this frosted glass, and we would literally in the middle of math class just get up and start climbing the wall. It was ridiculous, and we would just we would scream at the teacher. Yeah, we would like get up on our desk. We would scream at the teacher and just walk out to class and just go fuck off like anywhere we wanted. It was ridiculous. It's really a miracle that we graduated. And we would do that like every day. And we would we would like torture the teachers. It was so much. We had a really good time senior year of high school for sure.
Oh, I love senior year. I felt like you can get away with anything.
Anything. And the teachers were like, I just don't care. Like they're about to graduate. Fucking let them stand on a desk and scream.
Yeah, especially if it's like the last 2 months or something. They're like, I'll never get to fucking see you again. I don't care. Get the hell out of here.
Oh my God.
Your stupid punk music.
Oh, totally.
So you were, okay, in Sticker, you were writing all the songs, and you guys were going in a good direction. Like, what did you envision for the band? Like, where did you see it? Like, did you think, like, because I know, we started talking in the beginning, you had, like, Nuclear Gonzo, and, you guys are playing on boxes, and, you're playing your it was a bar mitzvah or was it a birthday or what was
It
the
was
party?
it was a Hanukkah party. That
Hanukkah
was,
party. Yeah.
but in all fairness, that was Ventral Fin. Ventral Fin was
Ventral
my
Fen.
very
Okay.
first band, and like no one knows that band, thank God at all. And I just Nuclear Gonzo is where I was at, but no, Sticker. I had no direction, which was
But did it
uh,
feel right though? Like, isn't it kind of cool that when you had that vision, and we didn't know it at that young age of 13 or whatever, that when you really want something, if you really want it, it could come to fruition. You can kind of make, and you can make it happen. Like, I'm a huge believer in this, but it's crazy to think that you were like, yeah, man, I would obsess about it. We'd practice for 16 fucking hours. We do this, and all of a sudden, Sticker shows up, and you're going, oh my god, like all the pieces came into play. Like, kids fucking like us. We're putting music out. Like, we all jive as a band. This is what I wanted.
yeah. At that age, I just remember feeling so singularly focused on the scene directly in front of us. There was no world beyond the Masonic Temple in Ridgewood. You just didn't. I don't know. Even though we would see touring bands, it was. I don't ever remember thinking like, oh man, I got a tour. That didn't really kick in until Example 24.
Interesting.
When it was like, oh yeah, we got a tour. We need to get the fuck out of our state. In Sticker, it was almost extracurricular. It was very much a lot of like get out of high school, and that night we're playing a gig, and then the next night we're playing a gig, and it was just very very New Jersey centric. It there wasn't a vision. I didn't say like, oh, this is the look we're going to have, or even the sound that we're going to have. It was just the songs coming out of us at the time. And by the time Jeremy joined, Jeremy was writing as well, which was nice. You would think there was some territorial feelings,
Yeah.
and maybe at first there were, but very quickly, like Jeremy's songs were good. Bill, Jack, and Jeremy started writing more. So by the time the band was coming to, or but so in your things, I did get kicked out of my own band, which is a whole
Yeah,
story in
yeah,
itself.
that I was going to talk about that next because Jeremy talked about how he was singing your songs and then you guys, and then that was the thing. I think, and granted, this was like 2 weeks ago, but my brain is shot. It's where do you want to go in that direction, or is there anything before that you want to talk about?
No, that's a good place.
How'd that end? Like,
They
so how was the split? Was it you left or they kicked you out or what was it?
So what happened was, I so they were my upper class, like Bill and everyone. Jeremy was mine, but below me, in the class below me, I forgot who the fuck I was even with. But at some point, someone was like, "We have a treehouse in New Milford in the woods," and I'm like, "What?" Like, I gotta see. And they're like, "No, it's fucking awesome. It's a place, we call it the Pit, and we just like hang out there, and we have like fires, and it just sounded awesome. It sounded like something I didn't know about in my town. I didn't have anything really going on, and I remember meeting at the Burger King, and the very first thing I see this guy Dean, and I had seen Dean before, but we never really talked. And I walk up to Burger King, and Dean's sitting there, and the first thing he says, and we say to each other, he goes, "You want a burger?" And I go, "Fuck you." So a dick, like a fucking dick. And he was so cool. And so him and a bunch of other people, we went down to the woods, and we were hanging out around this fire, and we just completely bonded. And at some point, I don't remember when, but very, very quickly after, I found out Dean was playing drums for this band it was a metal band called Alloy Metal.
Okay.
And they were very, very influenced by like Metallica and stuff. Dean was not into punk rock at all. And but he started coming to the Sticker shows. So it was like me and Dean, and we became really quick friends. And there was like an emotional divide and age, even though Jeremy and I were in the same grade. Jeremy, Bill, and Jack were hanging out big time. And they would all be like driving around and cruising and shit. And I would be like hanging out with Dean and fucking in the woods building a fucking massive treehouse. And this thing was like an Ewok village. It was fucking crazy. And you want to talk about like bonding? We would be there every day constructing this thing. It was huge. So you bonded a lot during that time. And at some point, I was like, dude, you want to like form, like, I kind of want to form a really fast hardcore punk band, like in the vein of Minor Threat. I remember feeling that. Like, Sticker was not, Sticker was a punk band, but we really weren't very fast. It was a
Yeah.
pop band, essentially. I wanted to play really fast. It was like definitely quantity over quality. I'm like, let's just write the fastest, loudest, angriest songs we could do. And that's what we started doing. And just at some point, the guys, Jeremy, Jack, and Bill, came to me and they gave me an ultimatum to either Sticker or Example 24, and I went with Example 24.
Oh,
And
shit.
yeah, and then they continued on, and I remember very vividly we played a show with them, and it was horribly, horribly awkward.
I was gonna ask that. I was like, did you guys run into each other? So it sounds like, oh
Yeah,
wow.
there was bad blood, man, for a
Where was
long
it?
time.
What hall was it at? I'm guessing
That
it was a
was
hall.
that was a hall in Waldwick, New Jersey, and I forgot what. I actually used to remember the exact date. I remember it was the 27th of something. I just don't remember when. But yeah, it was really awkward. And actually, Digger was playing that show. I remember Digger was on the bill too.
Oh shit.
And there was a whole bunch of bands, but Sticker went on before us, and they were still playing some of my fucking songs. And I remember being like, motherfuckers. And the crowd was still like equally into them. I'm like, they're playing my fucking songs. I remember being livid, but they were also incorporating their own songs, which were great. And it was, I really liked that they were headed in a totally different direction. Like if they were still playing music that sounded like the songs that I was writing, I would have been really, really fucking pissed. But they went in a completely different direction. So healing was really easy. And I would say like there was some bad blood for a while, but when it healed very nicely. I think for that reason, it was easy. It wasn't like, hey, we're friends, but you're still playing music that sounds like my music. It was completely different.
How did you guys connect after that?
I don't have a fucking clue. I don't remember, but that show in particular was very interesting. Example 24 was doing really, really well, and we went on. The crowd went berserk, and I remember it was a cement floor. And at some point, I jumped in the pit, and for a week after, I'm walking, and my foot, like, I'm like, I must have sprained it or something. It turned out I broke my foot in the pit, and I'd been walking on it for a week after that show. And I needed surgery, and they took bone out of my hip and put it in my foot. And for a year after, I was playing shows on a cast, and there was so many. It was crazy. I was on one foot for like a half-hour set. I'd be standing on one foot.
Oh my god,
it was nuts. But that was the thing. Nothing would stop you back then. You know, you'd get hit by a car and still show up to play.
you're like, yeah, I'll be late. Don't worry, I'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
Yeah.
did you? At what point did you start doing the backyard shows? Like, tell me how that. Like, where does that fall in line of this timeline we just talked about?
I was still in Nuclear Gonzo. So this was actually before Sticker. We did the first one. I believe the first or the second one was Nuclear Gonzo's last show. And again, I always have something on the back burner. So I believe I had started playing with Sticker at the very, very tail end. I think that's what we started doing. I can't, my memory is so shot at that point.
That's fine.
Nuclear Gonzo ended, and I think we were playing. But yeah, right, like Nuclear Gonzo. Oh my God, and Jeremy was in an industrial band. Jeremy was in a fucking industrial band that played, I think, Backyard Gig 2. PWFTP. Holy shit, I can't believe I remember the name.
I love when this stuff randomly gets unlocked in people's heads, and they're like, "Oh my
Isn't that nuts?
god!"
Like, I haven't thought about this shit in years.
So
That's crazy.
What, like, when you did the first show, what triggered that? Like, how the fuck did you sell that to your mom?
So my parents were divorced at that point. I think I was 15, I want to say. And it was the notion of kids my age are putting on shows in halls, in churches, in basements, everywhere. So why the fuck can't I? And that's exactly what we did. And thankfully, my mom owned a photocopier, and we would make our flyers on the photocopier, white out and cut and paste Ransom style. And yeah, we just go and we'd pass them out in school, and we'd go to the mall and pass them out, and that's how word would get around, and that's how it continued through Sticker and Example 24 and into my projects later in life.
How did you ask the first bands to play, like your first show?
Oh man, that's a really fucking good question. I think back then it was just so easy. It was literally like maybe I might have been okay. So I know Flatus played. I want to say it was one or two. I don't remember, but I remember seeing Flatus at the Pipeline, and I just straight up asked them to play, and they were like, yeah, like bands from that era. It was if someone asked you to play a show, they would be like, do you want to play in a backyard? And just so you know, there's bear traps everywhere. You'd be like, yeah, that's fine. When's the show? Like you would just go and do it.
Wait, you had bear traps in your backyard?
No.
Oh, like
if there was
the
imminent danger,
everywhere.
you would just there's like imminent danger, you still would play the gig. Like if anyone asked. So bands back then, even bands like bigger bands that we looked up to, were very quick. Same with the Casualties. So Example 24, we would see the Casualties all the time. And I can't remember how that started, but I remember going to ABC No Rio in the city and Coney Island High. And I got really, really into I was always into hardcore punk, but I just seeing this band that was like fucking gigantic mohawks and everything else, and just emulating that whole thing that you thought was like over the pond that whole time. You didn't think it was. I didn't know. I didn't know about 80s hardcore yet. I didn't know that had existed. So when I saw it, I just immediately clung to it. So asking them to play was very easy. It was just, do you guys want to play in New Jersey? That was it.
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to Jay Jerkoff in the last interview, and he said that he was doing a course in County College of Morris, and one of the guys in the Casualties was in his class or something. I think it was Jake. I think his name was.
Oh, yeah, Jake lives in Jersey City or lived in Jersey City.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, but we'd see him in class, and at night we'd see him at shows. He's all punked out, and he's got this Liberty spikes and everything going on. He's in class. He's like super toned down, and his hair is down. He's like, so what's going on, man?
Yeah.
Are you undercover right now?
Jake is a fascinating guy. I truly, truly love Jake. And no matter how big they've gotten, Jake has always been the shit to me. We played Warped Tour in 2007, and I was talking to Jake, and he remembered the Backyard gig. He remembered specific things about the Backyard gig that I couldn't believe. And for as big as they've gotten and as far as they've gone, and still, I love it. Jake and I are very similar. That like when we're on tour, we immediately go find the tourist spots or the off track spots. Very, very into culture and art and history. Jake is really into history. So yeah, that's a fascinating guy. He's not just some drunk punk, man. He's a good one.
I think a lot of people had that misconception of people when they're in the punk scene, like, oh, you just into this. It's like they're like, no, I actually really pay attention to this or that. They'd had this huge amount of depth in this one topic, and you're like, I never saw that happening. You're like, I'm just a fucking human being and just like this style of music. It's like
exactly.
I think even people. I was reading or I was listening to a Lawrence Arms interview that was recent, and they were like super dirty punk when they started. Not like dirty punk, that's a stupid phrase to say, but they were very just like straight up punk. But when they started the band, he was like, we just wanted to be the Goo Goo Dolls. And I'm like,
holy shit.
I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, we wanted to be early Goo Goo Dolls. He's like, me and Chris, that was influenced us, and we loved their style and this. And you're thinking, Jesus Christ. And sure, it is music, and it's not a huge branch off, but from what you're displaying to people think that you just live in this world of, well, if you're this straight up pop punk band, you'll listen to pop punk. If you're this, this ska punk band, you'll listen to ska punk and stuff like that. But that was, I think a lot of bands they'd listen to the bands that they resembled, or the style they resembled. But I think a lot of times they were listening to completely other shit. Like,
yes, that's a phenomenal fucking segue into Example 24 and how that band started evolving, and what you said about having a really interesting stage show.
Yeah.
So just jumping very far ahead, very quickly, just
Sure.
On that note, we started Dean and I. It was always Dean and I. Dean and we would fucking drive around. Dean and I essentially, Dean and I essentially were. It was. I have completely lost my train of thought. Dean and I were best friends, and we still are. And so we would do everything together. And we started listening to, I think Jane's Addiction was the first thing. We started listening to Jane's Addiction, and then we started listening to Rush and Iron Maiden. And we just started kind of veering off from everything that we'd been listening to. And it sort of happened very organically. Dean was always into Guns N' Roses. So Dean started listening to a lot of Guns N' Roses. And we would just tool around in my little punk rock car. And you know, we'd have Sex Pistols on. Then we'd have Iron Maiden and The Exploited, and then Jane's Addiction, and then GBH, and then Rush. And it just bounced around. So our music naturally started evolving. And we said, like, oh man, we want to fucking write more shit like this, or get, you know, our songs were a minute long. We're like, let's try extending that to 3 minutes, and then let's add a little, let's put an extra bridge here and try and get to like 4 minutes. And you really start exploring musically. And that's when, like I said earlier, we were very polarizing because we started so very punk rock. And then about halfway through the band, we started changing our music, and everyone fucking hated us. And we just watched our crowd understandably diminished. And I remember we were so upset, but we lacked the sight to understand, like, if you've been into this band for so long, and like this was the kind of music they were playing, and then they start going a completely fucking different direction, like a punk band becomes just a straight up metal band. You're like, what is this? This is not what I like. And
it makes sense though.
We were,
yeah, go on.
What's that?
No, go on. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. If you don't, it's like if I was eating Doritos for so many years. It's a really bad example, but if I was like, if I open a bag of Doritos, I know what I'm getting myself into. And if I opened it up and I was like, wait a minute, what the fuck? I'm eating, I don't know, fucking a salad now. I know it's an awful way to go, but I'm so used to that. When I show up at a place that is very familiar, I like the growth of that in that direction that it started as. But when it goes as hard left or right, I'm going, what the fuck is this? This is not what I was sold on. And then I think with music, you're so emotionally connected to it that you feel almost betrayed. And it's like you want to tell the band how to write, but that's not how this shit works. Like no band ever goes, hey guys, we're writing songs. What should the lyrics be? What should the fucking music be? It's just, we're going to give this to you and you're going to fucking listen to it. But that's our style. But if it goes so far off, people are kind of like, that's not what I wanted from the beginning. That's not the Dorito bag I wanted.
That's not the Dorito.
You're really bringing it around.
That's exactly what happened, man. And, you know, in those gaps of writing and recording, you know, you might take a month or two off from the scene, and then you come back, and to you, the band has been evolving. You're going from, so one of our biggest songs was Yanni is a Skinhead. And I think even Jeremy brought up Yanni in his interview, from what I remember. Yanni was a skinhead in our high school, and he was a really good friend of both of us. We're still friends on Facebook. And I wrote a song about him called Yanni's a Skinhead, and it was like our biggest song. And you go from that to fucking like, we added keyboards into the band. We had keyboards. We started wearing makeup. Like we got we started getting really dark. We went from a really fun band to getting like very introspective and very dark. And if the last time you saw us was at like the T-Neck Legion Hall and we were playing Yanni's a Skinhead, and then 2 months later you see us at the same venue and now we have like strobe lights and I'm spitting blood on stage, like this really happened. You're like, what the fuck is this? Like understandably, like what is this? But to us, we were, you know, the whole time we were evolving. Every day we're playing, so every day we're getting a little more into this. And you know,
it's almost like when Weston went from Got Beat Up to the Matinee, and then went from Matinee, I think they did a record after that possibly, but it was so different. It sounded like you guys went like really fucking different, but
it went real dark. But you're right. I remember getting one of the I can't remember which record it was, but one of the Weston records really let me down. And it's not like they fucking owe me anything. They don't owe me shit. But yeah, it was a totally different record it wasn't what I was used to.
Right.
As simple as that is, it just wasn't what I had heard on my tape deck for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
it was what you wanted it to be. So that's fucking hilarious, though. Yeah, but I mean, when everyone kept mentioning you guys, and you'll even hear me in interviews, I'm like, I have no idea who this band is. Like, when did you guys? When were you guys a band? Like, when did you guys break up as a band? As example,
okay,
sure.
so that
Even if even there's more things you want to talk about it, I just want to know like when the fuck did the band end? Because I'm like, why did I not know of you guys?
no, there's a it's a fascinating lineage. So we were a band from I believe 96 through the beginning of 98, and
Oh, okay.
we started as we started getting darker and as we started getting like more metal, we started attracting industry, which is crazy. We attracted a manager, we attracted some labels, and like we started playing Asbury Park. We started like frequenting playing the Stone Pony
Hmm.
because it was a matter of all right, we need to kind of come out of the hall and start. That's when we really started kind of aspiring for more. When we realized there was people interested in us that actually wanted to put us on a real stage, with a real sound system and shit like that, like stage lights and the whole fucking thing. And it started getting very exciting. And as we were doing that, we were losing more and more of our crowd. Dean and I started really getting at each other. We also had a really big personal thing that was very messy. I'll say like when girls came into the picture and we kind of started getting this rock star attitude, we started having issues, and I can't get into it because it's extremely personal.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so we were really at each other, and it was one of the peak moments. We were playing the Saint in Asbury Park, and we showed up, and there was a camera crew there to film us, and we're like, "How the fuck did you even know about us?" And we it was nuts. They just showed up to film us, and what they ended up filming, and this is somewhere floating away in the ether. Dean and I were about to fucking slug each other. We were screaming at each other on the streets of Asbury Park, fucking ghost town Asbury Park, and we are screaming at the top of our lungs in each other's face. And there's just camera crew just filming this whole thing. And at some point, Dean just bailed and just walked off into Asbury Park and just left the gig. And he showed up right before our set time. And when we got on stage, we trashed everything. It was just utter annihilation. And then I think we had like one more show, and that was at the Stone Pony, and that was okay. So at that point, this guy Dan Kennedy was a fan of Example 24 at the point that we started kind of going metal. Dan was hanging around with me a lot in the same way that I became friends with Dean during Sticker. Dan was just sort of always around. We were doing a lot of shit together. So when Example 24 ended, I was in a super fucking dark place. I had lost my best friend. Dean and I were so incredibly close. And I was heartbroken. I felt betrayed. I was a mess. And I said, I have a vision for this band. And this was 1998. And I said, I want to just go super dark. I wanted to get back to my industrial roots. I had always been into industrial and metal and punk, but I had been focused so much on punk. I really wanted to get back to the industrial roots. So I
Yeah.
said, I want a band with I just want like a backing track. I'm going to put like drum machine and keyboards. And Dan was really artistic and really into Nightmare Before Christmas and all this shit. I'm like, let's incorporate all that and let's make this band called Witch Moon. And that's how Witch Moon started. And Witch Moon was like this dark, creepy, really kind of fun, like heavy but fun, sort of bouncing music with all the energy of punk rock. It was all the energy, but sort of all the darkness of a goth band.
Uh-huh.
So it kind of was like death rock, I guess, but not really. It wasn't like, I don't know. It wasn't morose. It was really high energy, and definitely more like Marilyn Manson, more Nine Inch Nails style. So at that point, we were completely out of the New Jersey punk scene. I mean, completely fucking gone. But we
I'm,
took off.
I'm
Where
yeah,
example,
I'm literally looking at there's a video. I think you posted it. You have a YouTube channel,
yeah,
and it's called The Way Out,
oh yeah,
and it's yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I never heard of Witch Moon, so I don't. I This is fascinating. I'm watching this right
it's
now.
It's nuts, man. It's a whole world. So after that, so we had left the punk scene and took off where we left in Example. And I remember it was me, Dan, and we got this guitarist, Scott, who we found out someone, like a mutual friend was like, we know this guitarist. He's always at the Land and Sea Diner in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And you guys got to meet him. And I remember being like, so we're going to go now? He's like, yeah, he's always there. He's just drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes always. And we went that night and met him. And he was in the same spot. And he was just sitting there drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes. And he was this 15-year-old kid just sitting in the Land and Sea Diner. I remember he had a Fear Factory shirt on. And so it was me, Dan, and Scott. And then someone from the Bat Cave, not the Bat Cave, the Bank in New York City, the goth club, someone called us, and it was just another one of these, like, how the fuck do you even know about us? We had just formed. We were a week old, and they offered us a show, and I wanted to keep the momentum going, so I accepted it. And we weren't even a band yet, and we just started putting it together, and we ended up playing, and it went so well. I was like, you know what? I really want to start like booking and like touring. Oh my God. I have to jump back really quick. So my first out-of-state show was with Bigwig. Bigwig took Example 24 to Pennsylvania. So that's how really like the bug for touring started. So then in Witchmoon, like, I want to hit the road. I don't ever want to come home. I'm like, Dan, get your passport. And he's like, I'll get my passport when we leave the country. And I booked a show in Canada. And that was our second show. And we went up to Canada. And our first fans were a band called Kitty. Yeah, girl metal band.
Yep,
but at that point, they were just a local band in Toronto, Ontario, or whatever. London, Ontario. Sorry. And they were our first fans, and Witchmoon took off. We were part of like the whole 98, 99 era of Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, all those shock rock bands. We hit at the perfect time, so we just took off immediately. We were headlining by like our third show, and we were packing clubs. And Roadrunner Records got wind of us, and we were in talks with them, and we were in and out of the city. And that was a 2-year span of insane tour. We played with Danzig, we played with SOD, we played with Earth Crisis, we played with the Misfits, Cradle of Filth. Cradle of Filth bought our keyboard stand from us, and we were on their tour bus. It was funny. We were leaving, and the tour bus is all dark, and Danny Filth, the singer, is like really, really tiny. And I remember like I was in the back, and I just kept seeing like silhouettes of my band members falling over. Like, what the fuck is going on? And then finally I caught up, and it was this giant dog pile on top of Danny, and he had been like writing their set list in a lower bunk, and we all just dog piled on this fucking guy by accident. Hysterical. So that band had a whole fucking thing, and we were playing New York City, we were playing all over Canada, the Midwest a lot. We never made it out to California, but we had fans all over. And we had fans literally all over the world. And we hit the point where we sort of plateaued, where we really needed label support, because our reach was we didn't have enough money to reach everyone that we needed to. And it got super fucking stressful. We all quit our jobs. We were just rehearsing and recording. And we had all this interest from Roadrunner and other bigger bands and shit. And it didn't come together enough, and we all wanted to murder each other. And Dean was in that as well. Dean, after Dean and I had our big falling out about it, 6 months later, I got back in touch with him, and I said, listen, we are doing everything that we wanted to do toward the end of Example 24. You are my best friend. We had our falling out, but I want you with us. And Dean joined, and it was the best. It was the best fucking time ever. And then that band ended, and we were friends with Skin Lab from doing like a bunch of metal fests, and I called them up, and I said, and they were out in California, and I said, is there any band, like a big touring band, that I can just fucking hop on a tour? And they said yes, this band called N17 from Phoenix. And then 2 weeks later, I had a demo tape from them, and I was sending tapes back and forth. I was doing IT work at Montclair State College in the summertime, and they had a tour starting in like a month or two, and it just connected. It worked. I think I was 21 at the time, and I just packed one bag. I flew out to Phoenix, and the tour started, and it was the biggest tour that I had done at that point, beyond Witchmoon, and it was a full club tour, all huge clubs, huge. There was one night in Chicago. It was me, the Thrill Kill Cult, and Zim Zum from Marilyn Manson, and Richard from Filter. And we were all backstage, and there was a fucking table, like a mountain, Scarface level mountain of coke, and everyone in the room is like, they're all twitching and sweating, and they're like, "Come on, Kraig, do some coke." I'm like, I'm leaving the fucking room before the dust in the air gets in my nose, and I fucking overdosed. It was insane.
Wait, was this Filter then, like when Filter just started?
No, this was Filter. Like they were working on Title of. Oh no, they had just come out with Title of Record.
Okay, so the Airplane song was out.
Oh yeah, Take a Picture was all over the radio. And Richard and I struck up a friendship. And then after the N17 tour, I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, and Richard used to like call my apartment. Like my girlfriend at the time would be like, "Kraig, Richard from Filter's on the phone again." It was fucking nuts. And the guitarist at the time, I think the guitarist was leaving, possibly. And so I actually demoed "Hey Man, Nice Shot" and "Take a Picture." And Richard really fucking liked it. Then like 2 weeks later, he called, and he had been up for 3 days on coke, and he just calls and he goes, "Yo, your shit sucks." I'm like, "What?" And we had a huge fucking fight, a huge fight, and then it took maybe 5 years or 10 years later or something, I can't remember, but we reconnected, and he like apologized, and this was during they were supposed to head out on some really huge tour, and he ended up in rehab, and he was like, "Yeah, I was a fucking mess. I'm really sorry," and so we
this has nothing to do with any of the jerseys. I used to be a huge fucking Filter fan back in the day. Like,
shit.
I used to love a lot of that music. Like, kind of going back to the point I was making before. These, we'd play all these pop punk songs, but I would like bands like that. And like when Alkaline Trio came out, I fucking loved them. But a lot of bands I would listen to that were such a break from what the scene was. But I loved Filter. When Hey Man, Nice Shot came out, and I saw that on TV, I was like, oh, I like this, because it reminded me of seeing granted, it's a horrible comparison because the magnitude of what Smells Like Teen Spirit is way bigger than Hey Man, Nice Shot. But I remember seeing Hey Man, Nice Shot on 120 Minutes at like midnight one night.
Yes, yes, dude.
Yeah, and it was just so dark, and just like that and like that part kicked in, and I'm like, oh man, that just took me somewhere that I just felt that energy and the guy screaming, and I'm like, I want to play music like that so bad, which I never did, but I always loved that aggression in those songs so much, like so fucking much. And but yeah, I just want to like point that out. So Witch Moon, obviously this is breaking outside the scene, but this is amazing. Like I'm pausing this video. What did you do in the band? Because you guys look like you're dressed like Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson. Like you've got the shaved head with the braided long hair, and they play.
Yeah, we all had like
dreadlocks
like and shit.
Yeah, what's the microphone?
Singing to a lamp. Yeah, we it was so it was all my material again. And so I basically every band that I've ever really been in, like all the material, and just bring it to the guys and my guys who are playing and whatever, and say, these are the songs, let's do this. And in that band I was just singing.
Okay, because you guys literally look like Robin Finch from Nine Inch Nails.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I mean it's unmistakable. At the time, it would be giving away the ghost, but of course them, Skinny Puppy, like
yep.
We were very, very heavily influenced by all that. It's so incredibly obvious.
Oh my God.
We actually had Gidget Gein from Marilyn Manson on stage at one of our Jersey shows, which was a fucking blast. That was amazing.
That's fucking insane.
And then eventually, I got let's see. So when N17 ended, I was writing for N17, and they weren't digging the style. And we were sort of at odds after the tour. They started going a completely different direction than I liked in the band. And I headed back to New Jersey and formed an industrial metal band called Me vs. Machine, or MVM. And we very specifically, I said, I don't want any image for this band. I was so image focused for so long. We're going to have no image. We're going to play only punk shows. I'm like, specifically, we're going to take an industrial metal band and book us on punk shows. And that's what we did. And we fucking hit so hard so hard. It was amazing. That band was fucking like from the jump. We were really like doing very well. And then when that band started coming to a close, that's when I got back to like the scene and I formed State of Revolution, and we ended up going on tour. I wrote an entire record. I took a year off. I wrote a whole record, and I knew everything that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted the band to. I got back to essentially like I had a mohawk, I had a big fucking mohawk and shit, and I basically got a couple guys from other bands that I knew would be able to handle the material, but had never handled the material yet.
Yeah.
And we did a photo shoot in Patterson, and I remember getting home. This is when MySpace was really kicking, and I sent our page to 100 record labels, and SOS Records from California immediately shot back and was like, "We want to sign you guys." So we were not even a band yet, and I get back in touch with the guys that night, and I'm like, we really need to rehearse because they want us to tour with the Addicts in October. And so we we like 3 months to put a band together, like a real band, and then we flew out, and the first gig was House of Blues in front of like 1,200 people. And it was this incredible tour with the Addicts, and the Addicts are such an amazing punk band. Holy fuck, are the Addicts amazing? So to be able to play with them every single night, it was such a fucking honor. And that was incredible. That was a great time too.
It's so funny because at the beginning of this, when I was talking about when you started playing, that you were like, I just wanted to just be in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And then every time a band would stop, you're like, I can't stop this train. Like, I got to jump on to the next.
Absolutely.
I got to keep this going in some way possible. And I like the fact that like a lot of times, I mean, it didn't sound like every single band you had formed from the beginning. It was like, hey, this one's going on. Let me go in that direction. I think a lot of people from back in the day, when they were kind of like, well, especially when they started a band, they're like, well, every band has to be my band, so now I got to start from the beginning. And I think they missed that fact of, well, I just like fucking really playing. I love playing music. I love the style. Let me find someone else out there just fucking doing this, and maybe I can skip all the steps and just keep living this and go on fucking tour with them.
Well, in all, you're right, but in all fairness, N17 was the only band in my entire history that I did that with.
Okay.
So, but again, that was a very, very nice break in what you said. It was almost like going on vacation. I mean, it was a ton of fucking hard work still. Actually, I have a permanent scar above my eye. My bassist in Georgia took me out. I needed 14 stitches. I did the whole show covered in blood. I was gushing blood. I needed 14 stitches in my head. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, but yeah, I always, what I did skip though was the whole buildup of, all right, I got to find my guys, and then we need to write for 6 months, and then we start small. I have since Witch Moon just been like, this is the vision. This is the music. I'm going to fucking write the whole album. Here you go. If you want to go on tour with me, if you want to have fun, this is the band, this is the material. Like, you're free to do your own projects and shit like that, but this is my band and this is how it is. And then boom, hit the ground running.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned that a few times. I work for myself, like it says, since 2006. I freelance, and I have an animation company, which I have for 7 years. And I have freelancers where, parallel to being in a band, it's my vision in that same sense that you're talking about, where I would see Trent Reznor, and he was like, look, this is my fucking shit, and I'm going to have guys come on tour with me. When I come back, I'm going to have different guys come on tour with me. Or maybe I'll have, like, Robin. Is it Robin Fink or Robin Finch? I keep fucking that up.
Robin Fink, yeah.
Robin Fink. So he's like, Robin Fink will come on tour with me because he's like my go-to guy, but other guys will come and go. But this is my vision. And I've kept that in a business sense with my company. It's like, look, like, I don't want full-time people. I want you to come in here and there, but I just can't rely on other people. Well, like full-time. I can't have them have a say. I can't have partners. I'm not good with that shit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in all fairness, and this is going to sound so dickish, but people have awful fucking ideas that it takes the vision and it fucking takes it in a direction that you're like, I just don't, this is not, no.
Well, it's from a creative standpoint, it's, if you're in a business and you want to grow, it's good to give the people around you free reign and say, look, like you're in this position to do this, and I need you to just have your vision there. I think from a creative standpoint, it's hard to give someone that freedom because you're like, this is my vision. You're never going to see it and feel it the same way I am 100%. So it's shame on me if I just believe that you will, and then I give you part of control, and all of a sudden you're fucking it up and you're not doing the same thing that I want, and then I get mad at you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's handing someone a painting and being like, all right, this painting is pretty much done, but if you want, here's a fucking brush and just go ape shit on it. And you're like, oh, God damn it. This is nothing like what this started as Starry Night, and now it's like a Peanut fucking cartoon.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah, but then you're having them do their vision, and it's not that. And I think your statement is right when it's coming from your angle, but when it's coming from their angle, they see it as it makes sense. So it's not like they have horrible. How'd you put it? How'd you say it? They have horrible fucking vision.
Terrible. Just terrible. Like, hey, why don't we do this? And like, just shut up. Get in the van. I'm taking you to the next state. You're lucky I don't leave you to die in the fucking desert.
My God, I would never want to be in a band with you.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible being in a band with me. No,
but at least you're fucking aware of that.
Oh, I'm so aware, dude. In a band, it's just like I used to be a prick. Like I absolutely used to be like insane. And anyone in a band with me can tell you that. But look how far I've taken it. Yeah. And I'm aware of that as well, and no one can refute that. So it's when you have that vision and you're so clear and just nothing will get in your way, including your own bandmates.
Yeah. No, I 100% believe in that. Absolutely. All right. So we're at about an hour 30, and I'm going to ask you a few questions to wrap this up.
Sure, man.
If you could do a reunion show with Sticker or Example 24, which one would you do it with?
Wow, that's a fucking great question. I honestly would say Sticker, because Sticker was definitely, for that period of time, Sticker meant a lot more to people, I believe, than Example 24. So yeah, as much as I would love to get on stage and play with Dean and play those songs again, I think Sticker would be the one.
Do you have enough songs? Did you have enough songs as that version of Sticker before you left to actually play a full show?
Yeah, we had I remember, I think we had a 20 song set list.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I guess you did.
Yeah.
But again, back in the day would be like 10 minutes.
Thank you. Exactly the point I was going to make. Like 20 songs. Oh my God. No, that was 10 minutes. And then like, that's it.
So it was funny. I was doing the set list for our show we just had, and Barker was like, he goes, 14 songs. Like, that's pretty ballsy. I go, dude, they're like a minute long.
Like, no. Don't get it. This is not like an opus. Like,
yeah. I was like, I'm like, it's a good thing we're not Lifetime, because we could play 50 songs and that would be like 5 minutes.
There you go.
What caused you to stop doing this is like going way the fuck back, I'm a couple questions after this, but what caused the backyard shows to stop after that 300 person show?
We had hit the point where, it's a really good question. God damn. It's a good question. So we hit the point where the police were getting involved way too much. We basically wore out our welcome in the town. The last show, it was actually very, very cool. I have a picture somewhere of it. There was, I think, like three cop cars showed up, and they were just standing outside in the street. Like, none of these kids are hurting anybody. No one's causing trouble. All of the action is staying in the backyard. You can't even see what's going on. You could hear it from fucking miles away, but you can't see. There's no trouble. So no one was doing anything wrong. And that's a really important a point is like, dude, you got 350 kids, not a single violent incident, not a single house was wrecked in the nearby neighborhood. And it was just all fun. But it was definitely a matter of like, they were concerned that there would be. So we're taking valuable resources away from the town. So that was the point, that it was like, all right, this has gotten way too big, and we're going to give the police a break.
Or you're also like, as as someone, oh, I mean, not, I don't own any property, but I can know from friends owning property or seeing that it's like, oh, this kid's parked on my lawn, or he's parked in front of my house, or those little incidental bullshit things that happen in neighborhoods, or it's 5 o'clock on a Saturday and you're hearing these punk bands who you as an adult are thinking this is fucking awful, and I got to listen to this shit. So I think there's that aspect too where the cops there are kind of like, okay, fucking 5 houses down, they're not a big fan of this, so we have to be here for that aspect.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. We definitely were at our welcome with the neighbors. We would distribute flyers, like I think like 2 weeks in advance, and be like, listen, we're gonna have this outdoor concert. It's from this time to this time. We ask if there's any problems to call us or to come over. You're also more than welcome, like totally free to get in and whatever and enjoy yourself. But yeah, we would fucking piss off the neighbors, understandably bad.
I remember like going to some of these shows where back then I didn't care, but now I'm just like, oh man, that seems so intrusive.
Can you even fucking the gall? Oh my god, the fucking nerve of us, dude! Like I'd be like, what the fuck, dude? Like you all night long, you're going 5 hours of blaring punk music, just all of a sudden. Oh my god.
Yeah, and we're like, well, the hall down the street kicked us out because some asshole broke something, so we can't go there. It's like, God, it's like it's like everyone wants kids to go and be productive, and when they do it, they're like, well, you can't do it here. You're like, Jesus Christ, where the fuck are we supposed to go?
That's very interesting because I still face that today. I don't walk a straight line even remotely. So when I start to skew, other adults are like, what the fuck are you doing, man? It's just, it's always like that.
Yeah, because
you try and be productive, but you be productive in your own way, and it always ends up like infringing. Like you're recording an album, but you have an upstairs neighbor, so you're screaming your head off, and they have to deal with it. It's like always shit like that in some respect.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just, it's like it just doesn't get easy. It's like you still have the same things to deal with, but as a quote unquote adult, you're kind of like, well, I guess I could just pay to go over there where it's secluded and I get to control it and it's not bothering anybody. So I guess I could do that.
But I can't because I'm broke, so I don't want to do that.
and then that comes in and you're like, well, I don't have any fucking budget for this, so I'm not going to do that.
My budget is -1,000.
Okay, so actually one question before this. Is there something you wanted me to ask that we didn't talk about?
No, this has been so enjoyable. No, you've covered like my life in music. There's nothing I could ask for more.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad you're gonna. I'm sure after this too, like you're gonna just be sitting there, just reminiscing, and all these things are gonna fire off. You're like, oh my god, this, that, and it's like all these old memories are gonna unlock, which is
with a huge smile on my face. I'm telling you.
I'm creating smiles, Kraig. Creating smiles.
You are.
I mean, I feel like this is a stupid question. This is the one I always end on because it seems like I don't know. It seems like some people I ask this question to, and it kind of throws them because I think they have detached themselves from back then, but I think you've kind of kept with it the whole time. So I'm guessing you're going to have a fast answer. But so last question, what scene ethics do you still hold on to this day?
Oh my God, man. I mean, just do it yourself has always maintained. It's never wavered, not one bit. I've never deviated from doing my own thing, following my own path, following my own vision, not relying on anyone else to get it all done. And that integrity, and raw passion when I am performing or writing, that I can always feel it when I'm playing guitar. It feels exactly like it did back in '94. It's that same energy. It may sound different, but it's always with that same energy. And I believe bands from that period of time, that dudes that are still doing it like us, I have no doubt when you were on stage that night, you were putting out just as much passion as you did back then. And so those are ethics we carry. And now I have a daughter, my daughter Violet. She's 5.5 years old, but I'm instilling a sense of, you don't need to spend a lot of money to have a lot of fun. We just, we rocked around Boston this past weekend, went to, an outdoor fountain, and I say, listen, it's okay to go in all your clothes. Like, it's okay to get dirty and fucked up and have fun. And all of that is wonderful. And to be able to pass that on to my daughter and just say, express yourself in any way that you want, as long as you're not hurting someone else or yourself, yeah, just a sense of adventure and a sense of, there's no one but you to do it.